An outright thriller in the ACC. Miami continues to be chaotic, but man, they continue to find ways to win. Joe, Miami beats Louisville in a thriller. Your thoughts on? Well, I always ask you for your thoughts first. Here's what I'm going to say. Cam Ward, my goodness. But your thoughts on the game?
I stand by what I said in the open, man. There's always one team, unquantifiable. There's no numbers that we're going to really pull to back this thing. There's always one team every single year that they find ways to win, Blake. That every ball bounces their way, the calls go their way, they find ways to finish. And you're watching and you're thinking, they're done. There's no way that they're going to come back from this. They're going to win. And they still find ways to surge and have huge explosions, whatever it might be. Again, it was Washington last year. The year before that, it was TCU. This year, it is Miami. And it all comes down to the special level of play that Cam Ward has. I mentioned earlier that when you have a player or a position group that's not playing well in reference to Georgia, how does the rest of the team step up? The inverse of this, when you have a special player that other parts of the team aren't playing as good as they could, which was Miami's secondary, you have the ability for him to just take over the football game. Cam Ward played his best game, didn't have any turnovers, as I alluded to in the preview. I didn't think that Louisville's defense had shown enough success at turning opposing quarterbacks over or generating enough sacks, and he played phenomenally. He had time to operate. He showed great improvisational skills, and he drove the ball down the field. I am number one at the top of the Cam Ward for Heisman hype train. I think this award is going to go to a quarterback, and if it goes to a quarterback, it needs to go to this man, Cam Ward. He's so freaking good. Any game that they're down by 10 points or more, he can pull them back into it, even if he's the one who builds that hole. I'm in on Cam Ward. I'm continuing to be in on Miami. Their schedule is easy enough. I still believe, even though the betting odds say that Clemson will win the ACC, I'm still taking Miami, damn it.
All right. Let me ask you this before I give my thoughts on it. Do you think that was a fumble and that Louisville should have scored?
I'm blanking on which play. I watched a lot of
football. They overturned the Cam Ward throw. Louisville scoop and score. I got to be real with you.
I thought it was going forward. I don't know.
Not when the ball's moving. It's not. I'm going to be real with you. No, it's not. It's a fumble. There's no way that you overturn that.
Okay, I don't like doing the whole semantics of like.
No, I still think that they would have won, but you got it. Let's just be honest for a moment. The ball is coming out before his arm is completely moving forward. That's a fumble. Okay, I don't care what anybody. Miami fans are going to be here pissed off.
Man, they are the TCU in Washington. You're finding ways to hate on them.
It's a fumble. Well, it's not my fault. I mean, let's go through it. Now, let me just say this. Cam Ward and offensively, they are a juggernaut. Now, Shannon is somebody that I know. He's got to continue to run the football. Damian Martinez only getting 12 carries is lunacy. Absolute lunacy. Him having 7 yards a carry, what are we doing? Slow the game down. I get what you're trying to do. You're an air raid. He comes from air raid principle under Hal Mummy. It's where he was at Southeastern when we were there. But my thing is that Damian Martinez is snapping necks and cashing checks like it's the freaking Catalina wine mixer. Let me talk about them offensively. They're a really good football team. They got Restrepo is a dude. George is a dude. They got weapons all over the place. They got a really good offensive line, Joe. They are going to be chaotic for anybody that they play. They are one of, if not the best offense in the country based off of what we've seen. And Cam Ward makes them that. Now, does Cam still make bad decisions at times? Yes. But against Louisville, man, he was absolutely amazing. I still think that they need to find ways to get Damian Martinez the football more. 12 carries, 89 yards, and a touchdown. The big run where he broke tackles to pretty much ice the game there at the end. Absolutely fantastic as well. However, let's talk about them defensively. Joe, this is bad. You ready? They gave up a 43-yard touchdown run in in the second drive. The third drive, they gave 2 plays over 25 yards, both that were on third down. They gave a 100-yard kick return and a 21-yard pass in a minute of 3 minutes. So they had a kick return and a 21-yard TD pass in under 3 minutes. Joe, they are one of the worst teams in Power 5, actually statistically 132nd, if you want to make it known. The last month, they've given up more explosive plays than almost anybody in the country defensively. I don't think it's coaching. Let me explain. There were 17 times yesterday that Tyler Shough completed a pass when Louisville was on man-to-man coverage, Pro Football Focus. That was their statistic. So, Joe, they're getting lost in man-to-man coverage. They are having massive busts in the secondary, and these explosive plays continue to happen. I know what you're saying, and I've matured myself enough to know that this team can still make a playoff run, even though they are very bad and chaotic defensively. At some point,
I wouldn't classify them as bad. I would say that they're inconsistent.
Joe, they're very bad. They're
not very bad.
So they're getting lost in man-to-man coverage. They're getting lost in man-to-man coverage.
I said this to you on Twitter. They went up against a top 10, just 3 deep receiving core. They're one of the most productive receiving cores in the country.
What about Virginia Tech? What about Cal? You cannot look at me and say that the last 3 times that we have seen them that they have
given up a lot of big plays.
Well, because they had a secondary change at coach, and they're having the same mistakes that they did a year ago at DB. That is a problem. And you might not lose in the regular season, but I'm going to tell you this now. You can't do that against Clemson. Bottom line, you can
do that against Clemson. Clemson doesn't have the receivers that are going to stress you that much. I don't think Clemson's going to be able to keep up with them. I 1,000%
agree with that. I agree. But if you allow them to have explosive plays when their offense is not that good, Joe, they're going to stay around with you. And by the way, that's the best defense that they're going to see all year long, without a doubt. So there may be situations where Cam Ward on a 3rd down misses a pass. Name a better defense that they've seen than Clemson. I mean, it's just the facts.
No, I thought you meant Louisville, but yeah, go ahead. Good. Finish what you're saying.
No, I'm saying if they play Clemson.
Yeah,
Clemson
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to eliminate the explosive plays. As much as I love you offensively, as good as I think that you are offensively, Joe, we are biased in the sense that we had Miami winning the ACC. We had Cam Ward winning the Heisman. We thought Damian Martinez was going to be one of the top 2 best backs in the country. We are biased in the sense of we would want them to win. It's not going to stop me from coming out here and saying your secondary sucks right now. They do. They cannot continue to allow these explosive plays, because if they do, you're going to be like, how in the hell did we lose that game? And you almost did it with Virginia Tech. You almost did it with Cal, and you almost did it with Louisville.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number 1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. I think Virginia Tech has better receivers than you're giving them some credit for. The Cal game is a bad performance, and they gave up a couple of big plays that they shouldn't have. I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it isn't an issue. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a complete asshat and try to make the case for, that those plays don't exist on film. There is truth with that. I think it has a lot more to do with just general tackling, and you've got some young DBs out there that are playing and are contributing. And you put a couple of guys at safety into the NFL, and you're starting from scratch that normally would have been playing that safety net behind your corners that are out there starting. I just don't think it's going to hurt them. Like, I think that we're at the halfway point in the season. I think that there is room for improvement. I think that the remaining schedule that they have in ACC play is not difficult enough to like truly stress them in that mold, and they're probably going to give up more big plays. When they do get to the playoff, they're going to beat Clemson first of all. But when they do get to the playoff, yeah, they can't be doing that. Otherwise, they're going to end up being like Washington or like Texas last year, where they gave up big plays because their secondary wasn't as good as the other position groups. But we have seen to this point, Blake, we've seen plenty of teams that have very weak parts of their roster still end up being super successful. So I'm not ready to hit the panic button on Miami. Well, those are the 2 examples that I just gave you. Is that Texas and Washington last year? I'm using last year as an example because of a full season, and I'm not using an examples from this year. The 2 best examples last year were Texas and Washington because their secondaries were very inconsistent.
I agree with what you're saying, but just because it happened last year and those teams didn't get beat until postseason doesn't mean that there can't be a situation where they lose in the regular season because of it. I still think, Joe, they're arguably the best offense in the country. But, man, think about this. Let me ask you this. At what point does Miami get to a place where, hey, man, you're running the ball for 222 yards. Why don't you slow the game down just a
That's
smidge?
a good point. That was one thing that I was thinking about, and they do have like a really bad tendency to score too quickly. Like I really agree. I agree with you on
know
that.
you
Like
don't wanna
Dawson
slow
needs
them
to.
down. Well, you don't want to slow down Cam Ward, and I get it.
But if you have a lead and you've got these two enormous running backs, just run the ball. Just end the football game. Run the ball. Stop trying
they
to.
had 8 minutes. They could have run the ball and taken 5 minutes off the clock. They kept taking shots. I'll say this, though. We talked about in the preseason, they might have the most underrated wide receiver core in the country. Boy, do we look like geniuses at the current moment. That's all I'm going to say. Louisville, anything on them?
Mediocre. My point.
They're not mediocre. Sorry.
No. Yes, they are. My point that I had in the
is not mediocre.
He's fine. He's slightly above average. He's fine. He played a good game, and against what you just described as a bad secondary. My take in the offseason applies that these portal-heavy teams are not going to be able to produce as good results.
I agree.
They're not sustainable.
I agree.